What's going on, everybody? This is Brent0331. Appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. I got a special guest, Major Thomas Gingles. He was my company commander at one point during my Marine Corps career. He served a very long time, came in the Marine Corps in June of '89. He's what's known as a Mustang. If you guys never served in the military, never heard that term before, it's a gentleman that served both enlisted and then would later serve as an officer. In my opinion, they end up most of the time being the best officers that you ever have the privilege of serving under. So without further ado, guys, I'm going to introduce him. Here he is, Major Thomas Gingles, USMC, retired. Welcome, brother.
Semper Fidelis, everybody.
So let me set this up here. All right. So the whole premise of this live stream here is I like to bring in the the regular grunts, the ground pounders, the guys that are, they're going out to the patrol bases. They're freaking, living day in, day out in the shit, hitting, going on patrol, coming back. They don't really get the notoriety that some of the special operations and all that, jazz get. Not to take anything away from those guys, but like I said, I don't think the regular ground pounders get what they deserve. So the whole purpose of this live stream is kind of to highlight that and some of the successes that a lot of the Marines that have gone through the Marine Corps and gotten out and moved on to bigger and better things after their service, just to kind of put those in the live light here. So let's start with you. Let's go back to your enlisted days and what made you want to be a Marine?
All right, so I've answered this question a lot, and it's funny because like when you're 17, 18 years old, I enlisted as soon as I could sign the paperwork. But I basically went in the Marine Corps because I thought it was going to be like being a pirate. Like you could go to some foreign country, do some manly thing, and not rape, pillage, and plunder, but you get the idea. That's kind of what I thought it was going to be like, and it really kind of was that in a lot of ways, but in a honorable way. And I never intended to retire. I just kept doing it because it was fun. And one of the reasons that I have so much time, like from the start to finish, is because I took breaks. So I have some broken time.
Well, if you can go back that far,
right,
back to 1989, what was your first impression? Because I know back then it wasn't like it is now. Like probably a lot more unknown in terms of like Marine Corps recruit training, as opposed to now everybody can go on YouTube and kind of get a freaking documentary, walking your people through what you're going to see at recruit training. So how was your experience when you went to recruit training? Did you go to San Diego or Parris Island?
I went to San Diego, and I think it's like everybody's, even with people that have YouTube and that kind of stuff. We obviously didn't have that, but it was a shock. I remember I was actually probably one of the last 8 Marines that got to receiving for our company or our series. And I didn't get there in the big bus like everybody else did. I was in a small white van. There was a female, I think she was a corporal, that picked us up from the airport. They drove us around San Diego to disorient us like they do everybody else. And then she basically pulled up to the yellow footprints and said, "Hey, y'all wait here. I'm going to go inside and get the drill instructor." And you could see his shadow coming out of the glass door portal coming out to the receiving area where the yellow footprints are at. And it was nighttime. I know that when we landed, I looked over, I was on the side of the plane that you could see the recruit depot. And I remember all the lights going out at the same time. And I was like, oh, okay, it's serious now. But it was the first, I guess, 3 days you're going through processing and all that. And it's just kind of a blur. I do remember my parents coming to family day and picking me up. So my parents drove to California and we drove back. And I just remember, like, I don't think I relaxed on that 10 days of boot camp leave. I think I just was kind of in a fog or whatever. I don't know, post recruit training haze. So it was a shock, but I was in pretty good shape when I left, so I didn't have any problems with like PTing or anything like that. And I think probably the PT now is probably harder. I don't know that to be the case, but it's I think the Marine Corps has gotten better at getting fit. Back then we just ran, you just ran everywhere. It was not. I don't think it was different than anybody else's. I think you could have all of the movies and all the stuff, but until you're in it, you're not in it. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, I got a curious question. I think when you were in, you guys didn't even wear name tapes at the time, right? You just had a Eagle Globe and Amber.
Yeah, we just had. So you had a iron-on, Eagle Globe and Anchor, and the USMC iron-on patch. I still have some. I found some when I moved, but we didn't put those on until I think they may have let us put them on for our final drill uniform, and then the rest of them we didn't put them on our camis until we were getting ready to leave, like for graduation.
So how did you guys like tell name? It was like a stencil kit.
We had a little plastic thing that went on your left pocket, the inner button of your left pocket. It was just a little thing that went over the button.
That's
and you put your flap over it. And it was like a little piece of white paper in there with your name stamped on it.
Yeah.
And then when we got to the fleet, no, you didn't. There was none of that. I want to say, like, I think it was towards the end of '92. They came out and said, "Hey, you're gonna have to put name tapes on your camis," and it was kind of just, it was like an untalked about Marine revolt in the Marine Corps. Nobody did it, and then finally they came out and said, "Look, if you don't have this done in the next 30 days, you're going to get charged," or I don't remember what the slap on the wrist was, but finally everybody started doing it. But nobody wanted to do it when we did it.
That's funny. I don't want to jump ahead too much. Let's go back to SOI. So what infantry MOS were you assigned?
Okay, so when I got there, I was a 0311, and then they tried to put me as a 0352 because I had a high ASVAB score, and I don't know how I got away with this, but I remember telling my sergeant instructor, Sergeant Matrink, who I actually found on Facebook like a couple of years ago. But I told him as a freaking private that I would fail a test and they would just bring me back to an 11 platoon. So he talked to somebody. I don't know how that worked out back then because, like I said, I was a private or PFC.
Yeah.
And I never had to go over to be a 52. So I stayed as an 11. I was one of the first groups that did MCT back then. Every MOS did MCT together, and then you split after MCT, which was kind of a waste of time because it was like a pre-SOI for us. And I don't like my son is a Marine now. And we were talking about SOI graduation. I don't remember even graduating from SOI. Do you?
Yeah, I remember some little BS ceremony inside the gym for us.
Okay. I think maybe we had a formation and they gave us our certificates, or well, I don't even know if I got a certificate. I think they just gave us our orders and we were gone. But yeah, that's my son's SOI graduation. That was let's see, 3 weeks ago.
That's awesome. Yeah, I look forward to that. I'm doing everything I possibly can to hone my boy's path to lead him to that end
Well,
state.
and it's weird because I honestly did not know that's what he was going to do. He was talking about going to college, and my my nephew, who I may have sent you a picture with me and him, but I have a nephew that's a ranger with the first of the 75th in a Hunter Army Airfield, and I think that they were talking, and I think him talking to my son, that's kind of what started it. I know that my boys have been around the Marine Corps obviously their whole lives, but I've never really pushed them to it. I answered their questions and kind of left it at that because I wanted them to have their own life and their own path and all that shit. So I didn't even know he had actually signed the paper. I got a text message from the recruiter saying, congratulations, he just signed the papers. I knew he was talking about it because I actually talked to the recruiter. So that's how I kind of found out. But I'm super proud of both my kids. He's done really well. The thing that I'm happiest about it is he's actually happy and content with what he's doing.
That's good.
So
I want to answer a question. One of the persons asked, "What's an 0352?" So, when we talk Marine to Marine, like we kind of forget that there's non-Marines watching this. So I just want to emphasize. So like 03 is infantry, right? So when you go to the School of Infantry, you're essentially just assigned 03, and then once you get there, they pretty much say you are going to be specialty MOS. So then it breaks down to 0311 rifleman, 0331 machine gunner, 0341 mortarman, 0351 assaultman, and then 0352, what he was talking about is your tow gunners.
Yeah.
So that's what those are.
0352s may be real popular here pretty soon again.
Oh yeah. I know we're seeing the 51s and 52s make a huge impact on the modern day battlefield for sure. So you graduate from SOI, and then which infantry battalion are you assigned to?
So I did a small hiatus at Marine Corps Security Forces School. I went to, so I'd been the entire time I had been on the West Coast. We flew to Camp Pendleton East Coast, which is at Dam Neck, Virginia, and it was raining like Forrest Gump rain. And it's the first time, and I don't know if we can, you may know this, but back then you could wear your all-weather coat with your camis. And that's the first time I'd ever seen anybody do that. And this gunny came out, and he had the old black BCGs from like the Vietnam era on. And he got us off the bus, and we marched in the rain to go get our linens and stuff. And that was the first time in the Marine. I'd been in the Marine Corps for, at this point, like 6 months. And that's the first time it ever rained on us. But long story short, I went to Marine Corps Security Guard School. It was not MSG school. It was a sub like MOS type deal for infantry that were going to be guarding special sites, like special weapon sites. And while I was there, I got in trouble for drinking on the beach as a minor. And I didn't think it was any kind of a big deal. But when I got to my barracks in Charleston, I had to go to court for the ticket. And when I told my staff sergeant about it, it turned into this big deal. And I got sent to 1st Battalion, 6th Marines. And really, at the time, I felt like a dirtbag because I'd gotten in trouble. Of course, the Marine Corps made a much bigger deal about it than what it was. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I ended up getting out of there without having any kind of bad paperwork, and it really saved me from probably 2 years of standing post looking at a fence. So I ended up in Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 6th Marines.
Where are they out of?
Then we were actually on Camp Geiger, which is crazy going back to my son. So he was living when he was in SOI just a month ago, he was living in the same group of barracks that I lived in when I was in 6th Marines. He was in the barracks that he was in. I got put on regimental guard you do regimental guard stints for like a month. And the barracks that he was in is where I stayed when I was on regimental guard. And so we were at Camp Geiger. 6th Marines was the only regiment that was over there. So that's when I checked into 6th Marines. That's where I ended up at Camp Geiger at Lejeune.
You know, it's funny you say that because and this is unrelated to your story, but I was watching. I found this show that I'm not privy to, but I guess the original creator of like the Star Trek show,
right?
He had done something before that called The Lieutenant, and they filmed it on Camp Pendleton, and they used like real Marines and everything else. And you can tell they used real Marines because it's just they did so well in filming a lot of the stuff. And you know, even back then, there's so much that's the same. But in any event, there was this one episode I was watching, and they're filming this, and I knew exactly where they were because the buildings that they had the troops fall out of, the squad base that they were in, were the same ones we stayed in, Bravo 123, when we were doing our workup for Afghanistan. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Same exact buildings. And they looked exactly the same, like hardly any changes whatsoever. And we're talking, this is pre-Vietnam.
Yeah, see, so going back to Geiger, they've changed the entrance. You can't come off of 17. You have to go through the air station. So that's a little bit different. But the barracks are being redone. They've got newer roofs on them. The roofs we had were just flat roofs. And there's a lot of the same buildings that were on Geiger when I was there. And then there's a lot of them that are just gone. They're just concrete slabs, or they totally moved the building, and now there's a new building where the ones, because like when I checked in, the regimental headquarters was there. And so when I checked in, this is probably the coolest thing from that era. When I checked into 6th Marines, the regimental sergeant major got me and brought me into Colonel Sutton's office, and he sat me down for probably, I don't know, what seemed maybe 10 minutes, but it was like sitting with your uncle. And he gave me my French Fourragère and explained the history of the regiment, why it was important that I was there. That's probably one of the better mentoring talks that I had. And this guy was a full bird colonel. He had one eye. He had lost an eye in Vietnam, and he had two glass eyes. He had one that had an eagle globe and anchor in it, and the other one had a skull and crossbones. And he looked like a tall piece of beef jerky. Like he was in super good shape, very lean. Just what you'd think a colonel would look like. And he sat with me for probably 10 minutes and explained all that. And then the sergeant major came in there and yanked me out and took me over to, the battalion, and I checked into Charlie Company. But that was but the building that happened in is now gone.
Can you explain to the audience why it is that particular unit rates that French award?
Okay, so 5th and 6th Marines, because of the Battle of Belleau Wood, the French awarded those two regiments the French Fourragère. And one of the tragedies of moving as much as I have, and I'm desperately trying to find it. My parents died, and we were going through their house a couple of weekends ago. Finally, we've kind of gotten past all the emotion of them passing away and all that. So me and my sister and our family were kind of going, and I was hoping I would find somewhere in my old uniforms, my Fourragère, because I think I probably put it in the pocket of my Alpha blouse and hung them up. And then the only thing I can think of if I've lost it is I gave my blouse to somebody at some point because I didn't need it anymore, or something like that, and it was probably in my pocket. But that's the one thing that I cannot find, that it just freaking it hurts my feelings, because that's the one that Colonel Sutton gave me. And how I lost that thing, I'll never know. But that's the French Fourragère was an award for our performance in the Battle of Belleau Wood.
And they're the only ones in the whole entire Marine Corps that are allowed to wear it.
Yeah, and you can't wear it once you leave 6th Marines or 5th Marines. You can't wear it anymore. It stays it's yours, but you can't wear it unless you're in active duty of those two regiments. So,
all right. Well, let's talk about your first deployment.
all right. So we left. So I got very lucky. Like when I was saying this, when I got kicked out of barracks duty, which was at the time, it was like a kick in the teeth. I thought I was a terrible Marine and blah, blah, blah. So as soon as I got to 6 Marines, I checked into Charlie Company. One of our platoons was led by a lieutenant and 3 hash mark lance corporals, which was a popular thing at the time because nobody could get promoted. This guy, I'll never forget, his Lance Corporal Campbell. When I walked into squad bay, he said, "Hey, do you know how to call for fire?" And I was like, "No." I was still in my alphas. He goes, "Sit down. I'll teach you." So he broke his flight crew checklist, and we started doing call for fire. So that's the company that I got into, and thank God, because we went to the field. I think one time I must have impressed somebody when I was in the field because I was on regimental guard, and the squad leader, or actually my fire team, my fire team leader, who would become the squad leader, a guy named Corporal Taglaboo, who became Warrant Officer Taglaboo, or Gunner Taglaboo, came over there and got me off of regimental guard and said, "Hey, Jingles, do you want to get off of regimental guard and do super squad?" So I was like, "What's that?" And he explained. I said, "Shit, if it'll get me off of regimental guard duty, I'll do it." So we won super squad that year. And right after our last competition, we deployed to Okinawa, Japan on a UDP. And we were at Camp Schwab for maybe a month. We went to CTA for a field training event, a patrolling exercise or something. And we were in the field. We're supposed to be in the field till Wednesday or till Friday, and they pulled us out Wednesday and said, "Hey, get back to the link-up points. We got to go back. We're going back to the rear." So we got back to the rear. We got off the trucks. We had a company formation. The company gunny said, "Hey, Iraq just invaded Kuwait, and it looks like we're going." And I just remember turning to somebody and saying, "Hey, where in the hell is Kuwait at?" Because I'd never heard of it before. And they said, they told us, they said, don't call anybody. Don't tell anybody what's going on. We'll pass more word as we get it. Go turn your weapons in. So we went and cleaned our weapons real quick, turned them in. And as soon as I could, in typical PFC, or I think I was a Lance Corporal at that point, I went and called my parents. I didn't say anything. I just said, "Hey, watch the news. If you see stuff going on the news, I'm probably going to be involved." And then I didn't talk to my parents again for, hell, I don't think I talked to them again for 10 months. But the next morning we went and drew a bunch of desert gear, and then I got put on an Advon with another Lance Corporal to ride with our pallets of sea bags. So we flew from Okinawa to Subic Bay in the Philippines. We got a night of liberty in the Philippines, and we got on the ship. And I think I sent a picture of you to you from me on the ship I was on. It was the USS Okinawa, and I think it's a coral reef now. No, not that one. That was later. It's just me by some 46s on a flight deck. But anyway, so we were on the ship, and I want to say we were on the ship. We piggybacked so they could get us there with, I think it was 2-4. That's me and Sergeant Patton. He lives. That's when I was a sergeant in 123. But
I don't think I have that photo.
yeah, you may not. So we piggybacked with another infantry battalion on their ARG, or amphibious readiness group. So the group of ships, they were on a Westpac, and then we flew off of the ship into Oman, and we sat on it was an Air Force base in Oman. I think it's probably like a penal colony for the Air Force because there was nobody there. And then we flew in helicopters from the ship to the airport, or the Air Force base in Oman. And then from there, we flew on Air Force C-130s and landed in a soccer stadium parking lot in Saudi Arabia. And we were one of the first battalions from the Marine Corps to actually get there. We guarded the port of Jebel for like a month while the Army did a MPF offload. And then we would go out into the desert, and we would be up on the border in defensive positions, patrolling in a big linear defense. And then we'd do a relief in place. Another battalion would relieve us, and we'd go back somewhere way back behind wherever and train for our mission. Our mission changed a bunch. We were going to be in helos. We did, and then we changed to mech. And then we went back to doing helo stuff. And then they finally decided that we're going to be one of the breach battalions for 2nd Marine Division. And,
is this all part of Desert Shield?
Yeah. Sorry. So we were 1-6 was one of the breach battalions for 2nd Marine Division's assault into Kuwait. So we breached 2 mine belts or obstacle belts, and then we cleared. I don't know. I just remember our lieutenant giving us the op order, and he had this massive map sheet. And basically, what I remember is when we come out of the second minefield, we're going to hit an Iraqi mechanized infantry platoon position at this location. We're going to clear it. And when we clear it, we're going to move. We're going to link back up with the tracks, and we're going to go our next position. We're going to hit an Iraqi mechanized infantry company. We're going to clear their positions. When we clear that position, we're going to link back up. And he kept going through this. And finally, at the end, somebody just asked, like, "Hey, sir, there's only so many of us. I mean, like, how many of these things you think we're going to actually get through?" And he said, "We're going to go till we can't." And so that's kind of how that went. But we, I think we entered the first minefield, and this is all based off a letter that my company commander wrote all the Marines in the company when we got home.
So this is the wars kicked off. You're the first Desert Storm veteran that I've had on here.
Yeah.
So can you just explain like how the opening sequence of the war kicked off and everything else?
Yeah. So we were there. This was a 10.5 month long deployment. So we had basically a month in Okinawa, and then we sat in the desert. And I say sat, we trained, and we had numerous, battalion linear defensive positions. We were patrolling. We did ambush patrols. There were places where we could see Iraqis. There were places we didn't know. We were probably 15 miles from the border. There was probably other units in front of us. But we moved, and I don't remember the dates, but I think it was in February. We moved to a big division assembly area. And when we got there, you could see numerous artillery batteries all around us, and they started the prep fires. And when they started prepping the breaches and the objectives immediately behind the breach with artillery, the Iraqis set the oil fields on fire. And I remember just watching it was like a huge thunderstorm of just pure black smoke. It was like somebody took flat black spray paint, was painting the sky, and it just would get closer and closer. And finally, when it covered us, you could just see a band of sunlight on the horizon way behind us. And then it was lights out. It was total blackness. Our fire team dug a hole, kind of like a swimming pool, so we could all lay down in there. And I just remember digging in. It was probably maybe 1.5 feet deep. It was kind of like a mortar pit, but we were all snuggled up in there like a bunch of puppies on our ponchos and poncho liners. And I remember not sleeping really good that night. I don't remember having fire watch or anything like that. I just remember at some point somebody woke us up, and we got in our Amtraks. And I just remember in the back of the Amtrak, it was dark, that we had one little green light that was on in there, and you could kind of see people. But people were sweating. They're profusely sweating. We had some people that were getting sick to their stomach. Then we got we got through the first breach lane. And so we were between a big obstacle belt behind us that we had breached. And then I think we were in a minefield. And then we moved through that minefield and hit another part of the second obstacle belt. They breached that. And then as soon as we got through that second breach, we started taking intermittent artillery fire from the Iraqis. And I just remember, like, we had all our packs on the outside of the Amtrak. Our packs were not shredded, but they had holes from shrapnel and shit in them. And then you could hear it hitting the side of the track. When we got to our first position, my squad leader's name was Sergeant Hess. And when the Amtrak ramp unbuckles, it's got those two locks that makes that chunk noise, and it started cracking open, and we were literally pushing the door down to get out. And I was probably the third Marine out of the track, because nobody wanted to stay in there. But right before they opened the back door, our squad leader said, "Fix bayonets." And the last thing I remember him saying is, "I'll see y'all on the other side." And so I got out with my fire team on one side. I don't remember if I got out on the left or the right, but we got out and started clearing positions. And it was real foggy. So you talk about the fog of war. It was literally foggy. There was a lot of artillery landing kind of around us. None of it super close.
Was it heavy artillery, or was it mortars, or?
No, it was heavy. And the first time you're shot at, it's all heavy. But I'm pretty sure this was probably 152 millimeter howitzer rounds hitting around us. I do remember, so the first thing that we cleared was, as soon as we got out of the track, we were maneuvering up beside the track, and you could see a recoilless rifle pit right in front of our Amtrak. So we got out and we assaulted it. And so the crazy thing is while all this was going on, there were Iraqis surrendering. So we were clearing this position, and so you had some people that first position was a platoon. So there's probably 30 dudes surrendering, and then there were like 5 or 6 of them that were shooting at us. And so we killed them quickly. And then we just started methodically clearing these positions. So the first thing I got into was that recoilless rifle pit, and it was pointed at our Amtrak, and it had a rocket in it, and it had 2 rockets prepped in an ammo bunker next to it. And the position was a T, and the bottom of the T was that pit, and then it went up, and then it went, the top of the T was where their sleeping and fighting positions were at. But it was not very deep. It was probably thigh to hip deep. And then their overhead cover was just some old tin and shit that they had found just to cover them, keep them out of the sun. But it was not it wasn't a bunker. And we cleared that, and then we just started searching prisoners. And we would just take their weapons and tell them to go south. There were other units that were behind us. In fact, my son's unit was on, I believe they were on our left flank. I'm not going to say the unit, but we had another battalion on our left, and then the Army's Tiger Brigade was on, I believe they were on our right. So, but at this point, I know I was a Lance Corporal. For being a rifleman, I feel like we all had pretty good situational awareness because we had been training for this thing for a long time. So we knew our adjacent units. We knew what their missions were. I knew what our mission was. Now we didn't really know our limit of advance for the first day because we didn't know how long we were going to last, to be honest. I remember at some point during that first day, guarding a line of Iraqi prisoners, and there was a guy that kept laughing. And it pissed me off because I was like, man, I've wasted, I've been over here sitting in the freaking desert for, at this point, I think 8 months. And so the guy kept laughing. I told him to stop laughing. He wouldn't stop laughing. So I butt stroked him and knocked him out. And I remember thinking I was going to get in trouble for it. My squad leader just came up and said, what happened? I told him, he's like, well, he probably got what he deserved. And that was about all he said. So we did that. And then we got back in the Amtraks and we went to the next position. And it was kind of a repeat of the first one. I remember at some point during that day, our Amtrak stopped and we got in. We started taking pretty heavy, accurate, effective artillery fire. And I remember getting, the only cover I could get was where the Amtrak had driven, getting in that little divot in the ground where the Amtrak was at. I remember getting in that and just praying like, man, this is not good. And the Amtrak moved up ahead of us and was suppressing some positions that were in front of us. And they moved up pretty far, probably, 75 meters or so out in front of us. And where they had moved from, an artillery round landed exactly between the track marks and would have hit that. It would have hit the Amtrak. So that was like, looking back, that recoilless rifle not being used, had they shot it, they would have killed everybody in that Amtrak probably. They didn't use it. So there were all kind of lucky things that happened that day. We'd find machine guns that were pointed at us that had rounds in them, but they didn't use them, or they were jammed. They were having, they had problems. And like I said, we would clear a position and 90% of the people in that position were giving up, and then 10% were not. So it was very strange. It was the fog, like I said, the fog of war. The weather was, you couldn't see very good. So it was chaotic. And then I think the third night we actually, I think the third day we started hitting positions that were completely abandoned. I remember going in a bunker, and there was a guy's uniform laying there, very like clean, brand new uniform. His rifle was laying against the wall, and kind of like on platoon, there was a cigarette still burning in like a little makeshift ashtray. We found coffee pots that were still warm. And as they were leaving, they were just shooting artillery at us. So not a lot of direct fire that third day. Most of it was just harassment fire. They would shoot a few rounds at us and it would stop and we would kind of move. But I do know we cleared one position that I think had been a regimental size position that had tank trenches dug in it. And they were probably 15 feet deep, and they were big enough. It was a roadway for a tank to drive around down in a trench. We cleared a bunker that was full of 120 millimeter rockets that had we thrown a hand grenade in there, it would have blown up the whole damn hill, or could have. So there was like I said, there was just all kinds of lucky things that happened. But we didn't have anybody get killed during the initial assault. Thank God. We ended up losing one Marine later. He was on watch and this hole caved in on him and smothered him to death. Lance Corporal Thomas Torman, and he was one of our machine gunners. But that was after we kind of finished clearing everything. And I know the third night, it was super, super, super dark because of the oil fires. And we occupied a hasty position at night, and we got up the next morning and got back on the Amtrak. We had been walking around all night in a damn minefield. So the next morning when the sun came up, you could see the three-pronged trigger mechanisms of the mines sticking up out of the sand, and how none of us stepped on one of those, I don't know, but just
holy shit.
Miracle. And how a vehicle didn't drive on one. I think it was probably, in, I guess, engineer terms, it was a low density minefield or whatever. I don't know, but there were some mines around us. I know that. So, and then I don't remember much about the fourth day. I just know that we ended up in a position somewhere north of Kuwait. I think Kuwait City. And then I know we were close to the highway of death where they had done all the bombing runs and killed all the Iraqis that were fleeing Kuwait, because we could walk to it from our position. And somewhere in my old pictures, I had pictures of all that, but you'd see a truck, and there'd be like a truck that was carrying personnel. So that everybody in the back was burnt to a crisp from the waist up. And then from the waist down, their trousers and boots were just like they'd brand new wearing, but from their waist up, they were completely burned. Like they'd been shot with a flamethrower or something, but they were just completely black. They looked like black mannequins from the waist up, and then dressed human beings with trousers and boots from the waist down. And there was just miles of that shit.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I saw a lot of that during the invasion.
Yeah. So, I remember one time we were driving, and somebody asked, like, hey, we're looking for this certain road intersection or whatever. And they said, drive to the elbow and you're going to take a left. And we're like, what the fuck is the elbow? And the guy's like, well, you'll know it when you get there. Well, the elbow was a dead Iraqi who had rigor mortis, and his arm was sticking up and his hand was pointing to the left. So people were using that for a road sign.
Jesus.
But I think 4.5 days and the deed was done. And then we sat somewhere in Kuwait for, I think, a month. And the rumor was that we sat there so long because they didn't expect us to be around to get us out of there. So I don't know how true that is. That's Lance Corporal scuttlebutt. But I do know at some point, probably maybe a week after everything kind of ended, they brought these AT&T phone trailers up. And back then, everybody carried their little black book and an AT&T calling card in their wallet. So I was able to call home and tell my parents that I was alive and that I didn't know really when I'd be home, but I'd keep them posted. So I went from the time we were in Okinawa all the way through that without getting to talk to anybody. That's just the difference between something 30 years ago and today,
it's crazy you mentioned that, because you just completely triggered a memory in my head. I mean, it was still like that in 03. We had the little AT&T calling cards. Yeah. And you had a little address, like phone number book.
Well, and the other thing is like our mail was on like a 14-day turnaround. So I remember writing my mom, telling her I needed some Skull and some AA batteries. Like 28 days later, I got 2 AA batteries and a can of snuff. I was like, Mom, it's a month turnaround. Like I need a whole, at least 2 logs of Skull and like a bunch of batteries, not 2. Because by the time I got those batteries and wrote her a letter, the ones I got were gone again. So it was just funny shit like that would happen. You're just like, man, this is crazy shit. But my Iraq deployment, we had, I had Nipper and Sipper. And so I could email my wife and I would just send her an email, say, hey, I'm going to be busy for a couple of days. And then I'd email her when I got back. So the email was a lot different. Technology. So we were 12 hours, email wise, we're about 12 hours apart. I don't know do you know what the time difference is between here and Iraq? Is it like 8 or 9 hours, or is it?
Oh, I don't remember.
I think it's like 8 or 9 hours. I don't know. I
just operated on the premise that if it was nighttime where I was, it was probably
exactly. Exactly. And we had, so the company that I was with on that deployment, we had 3 Iridium phones, and we kept one on the cop I was on, and I could have called every day, but I think I called home during that deployment maybe 5 times or something. I mean, what are you going to talk about? Like, so I would call like on Christmas, kids' birthdays and stuff like that, but most of it was emails.
Well, let's go back to Desert Storm. What was it like the retrograde back? What was the reception like and everything else?
All right. So you remember I told you earlier about being on Super Squad. So when we came, I just remember at some point we got picked up. They trucked us somewhere back to probably somewhere in Saudi Arabia, just on the road. And I think we got on buses and they took us somewhere just like out in the desert, and we turned in all of our ammunition. And I was on the working party for that, and it was truckloads of ammunition. So like in the bottom of our Amtrak during the assault, we had a layer of sandbags, and then we'd taken the middle bench out of the Amtrak, and it was all machine gun ammo in crates. And then between the benches on the side and that middle bench, it was just a layer of AT4s and law rockets, and we just were standing on them. So when you get out of the vehicle, you just reach down on the floor. If you could get to the floor and grab a rocket on the way out, I always tried to grab a law because they were lighter. But we walked on them. I mean, they were just in there, which is kind of funny because you get back to the States and ammo handling is like completely different than that. But we went somewhere and turned all our ammo in, and I think we sat there for probably a day or two getting all that done and making sure all our ammo was off us. I know we probably kept some safety rounds, and then we took buses from out in the middle of nowhere, and they took us back to Kuwaiti International Airport. And I remember being probably 200 yards from the plane, and you could smell the stewardesses on the plane, which is kind of crazy how your sense of smell when you live like a freaking animal for that long. Because I went from Thanksgiving to Easter without having a shower or a bath. We had enough water to shave with to keep our gas mask facial seal good. But I went from Thanksgiving to April without having any kind of a bath. I don't remember at some point we got cleaned up somewhere because they gave us desert boots and a new uniform to go home in, which was kind of a joke because the boots I had when I left Okinawa were just the old Vietnam era green sided jungle boots. I think in that picture of me as a lieutenant, I don't think that was the same pair of boots, but they were like those. That's what we all had when we went into Kuwait. We didn't get the desert boots till we got finished, and they wanted to make us look pretty to come home. But we got cleaned up at some point, and then we flew back to Cherry Point, and we got to Cherry Point sometime late in the night, like you always do, and then we got back to Lejeune. And when we got back, we were no longer on Geiger. We were on Main Side off the traffic circle. And I remember getting off the bus in the parking lot, and they had a quartering party, like the company gunning. I think our police sergeant were already there. They handed out room keys. And we just all went to our rooms and passed out. And about 30 minutes after we all got in our rooms, a freaking 2nd Marine Division band showed up and started playing music out in the quad. And I remember walking out my door, and just about every Marine in the company was out there yelling at them, telling them to go away, freaking leave us alone. We just wanted to go to sleep. And they were out there playing. I think they played music for like 20 minutes and finally just got disheartened and left.
Now, was that like a welcome home type deal, or was that like they were just practicing?
Well, it might as well have been practicing because nobody gave a shit. Nobody cared. I remember I did have a pair of civilian attire in my sea bag. And so we got back, and I think we were there for maybe a day or two, just milling about smartly. And we got a 96 and a kid. I didn't go home for the 96, but a kid that was in my fire team was from Savannah, Georgia. And he went home for that 96 and got killed in a damn drive-by shooting at the mall. He was with his sister. I think his sister was in a gang or something, and they were at the mall, and they were trying to kill her, and they actually killed him. So that happened. And then we came back from the 96, and then they sent us home for, I think I got 14 days of combat leave. And then right after that, they had the victory parade in DC, and because we didn't get our super squad badges, when you win super squad, the Commandant of the Marine Corps gives you your badge at a parade at 8th and I. We didn't get to do that because of the deal, the war. So we got picked. Our super squad got picked to go march in the Victory Day parade at in DC, which was pretty cool. And we did get to go to an evening parade at 8th and I. So I just remember me and this kid Kelly walking across some like project right outside the Marine barracks at 8th and I. And when we got to the post, the Marine on post, like, where'd y'all come from? And like, oh, we walked from the subway station through the project. He's like, man, y'all freaking crazy. We get shot at from there all the time. We didn't know any better. We just walked through. We were in our chucks, and we went to the parade. And then I think we got, as soon as the parade was over, we turned our weapons in somewhere, and then we had like Liberty in DC. So we just walked around for a day in our desert camis. And then I know we were in our Charlies for the parade. And then we got through with that, went back to Camp Lejeune and started training. We just went back to work.
How much time did you do another deployment with that battalion?
So no, so we got back. Everybody started moving around. We lost our platoon sergeant, our platoon commander. Our whole company got reorganized. Our company commander went somewhere else. And we got put on, we were doing air alert at the time. It was air contingency battalion. You had to have all your stuff packed, and it was a big inspection process. It was just a big pain in the behind. It was just junk on the bunk after junk on the bunk. So we did a bunch of that. And I think that rocked on. I think we ended up doing it like a month and a half or something. And we went to, did a CAX. And then we came back from CAX and went to Bridgeport. And when I was in Bridgeport, we went to Bridgeport first, and then we went to CAX. And when I was in CAX, I picked up corporal when I was in Bridgeport. And then because I was a junior NCO in the platoon, I got picked to be over a working party that stayed on rear party at 29 Palms, picking up brass and cleaning ranges and stuff like that. And while I was there, I called back because I'd let my buddy. I asked my buddy when he got back to take care of my car, go get my oil change and something. So I'd called back to check on my car, and he said, "Hey, you got orders?" And I was like, how do you get orders? Like I'm going to EAS from 1-6. Like I'm not leaving anywhere. So he's like, I don't know. You're going to some boat thing. And I was like, okay. So I got back, and as soon as I got back, we were doing another air contingency battalion inspection. And I ran into my platoon sergeant on the ladder well, and he said, "Hey, you need to go to the company office. You got orders." And I was like, "Where in the hell am I going, Staff Sergeant?" He goes, "You're going to headquarters battalion." I was like, "What the hell am I going there for?" He goes, You don't have enough time," because they were getting ready to go on a MEU. He goes, "You don't have enough time to do this MEU, so you're going to headquarters battalion." And I was like, "What am I going to do at headquarters battalion?" He goes, "You're going to small craft company." So I was like, okay. So I checked out. It took me like 30 minutes to check out because I had all my stuff was ready. And I ended up in, at the time, the Marine Corps had what was called Riverine Assault Craft Platoon. We ran 35-foot Riverine Assault Craft. It was just a patrol boat. So I did that for the last year of my active duty stint. It was probably the best. It's probably the best year of my early Marine Corps life. We were on the water a lot. We went to Panama. I went to Argentina. These were quick deployments. We'd be gone for like a month.
Was this 91, 92?
It was mid 91 or late 91 to May of 93. I got off of active duty sometime in May of 1993. And I came home to North Louisiana, and enrolled in Louisiana Tech University, and then I checked into what was then Weapons Company 123, which is where what would become Bravo Company, where you and I served together. So I was in Weapons Company. I was there for the first drill. I was a corporal, and then the second drill I got promoted to sergeant. And I was there. I was an 81's FO for the time we were a weapons company. I think we were a weapons company for probably, I don't know, probably 18 months, maybe 2 years. And then the Army stood up the JRTC at Fort Polk. And because of that, we started losing the ability to go down there and shoot mortars. So to save on bus time, they redesignated us as a rifle company, and the weapons company, I can't remember. I think they were in Houston. Isn't that where Weapons 123 is at now?
Weapons, I believe, is in Corpus.
Okay. So that's right. So they switched us, and we became Bravo Company 123. So, and then I stayed there.
Or Waco, sorry. I think they're in Waco, actually.
Yeah, I think that's right, Waco, because Corpus Christi's Charlie Company, or Charlie Det.
Yeah.
But so I was there. Like I said, I checked in as a corporal. I picked up sergeant, I think the next drill, or maybe 2 drills as a corporal, something like that. And then I stayed there until I went back to officer candidate school June 6th of 1999. So.
Well, so those pictures you sent me were on ship. What is that from?
That was an AT. We went to did amphibious training at Coronado Island, and I think that was the USS Shreveport. I think I'm not. I don't. Yeah, that's that one right there. That's our platoon in there. If you look in there, to what would have been my right, off my right shoulder, was our platoon commander, who was actually a British Royal Marine. That guy right there.
Oh yeah, you can see his DPM on.
Yeah. So in the reserves, I was actually a platoon commander as a sergeant because we didn't have officers. And this guy was they have an exchange program, and he took over the platoon as our platoon commander for that AT. He's a super good guy. He was a professional rugby player, and just a great human being. I wish I could find him.
I don't think people realize like how close knit the U.S. Marines and the Royal Marines are. Like we train all the time. I even got the opportunity to go do an exchange program with them for a couple of weeks. And they came up to Bridgeport with us. I mean, we're constantly doing stuff with them.
Oh yeah, no, he was awesome. Like his it took us a couple of days in the field to get used to his like jargon. But he was the guy was a freaking meat eater. He was good. He was hard. He was super, just very British. You know, you didn't know when he was mad. But just a super guy. Probably he's one of the people that you serve with for a quick period of time, but because of an AT, you know, you get into this weird. It's only like 2.5 weeks, but it takes up a lot of your mental capacity. But he's one of the people that I've had the pleasure of serving with that I wish I could go back and find, because I'd like to see what happened to him.
Yeah, man, I can't speak more highly of those British Royal Marines. I know when I was down there doing the exchange program with them, they're just phenomenal dudes. And then their HTC literally had like an officer / staff NCO bar. Then they had an NCO bar, and then they had a junior Marine bar in the HTC.
Oh yeah.
I'm looking at this like, God damn it. The Marine Corps was born in a bar, but yet we don't have this.
Well, I remember we got, you know how you get Liberty at the end of these ATs, and I just remember going to some bar in San Diego, or right off. I think we were actually still on the island. So with Coronado, some bar in Coronado, and there were a bunch of officers there from our battalion, and our lieutenant drank like 4 of them dudes under the freaking table. Like that cat could freaking put it away.
Yeah.
And he never. had I not been watching him drink, I'd have never known he was drunk. he was a professional.
Yeah. When I was down there, the first week we were there, it was kind of just fucking off in London. But the second week, we were going down there to do what they call juniors and seniors, which is like their equivalent to like I don't know, maybe a squad leader's course.
Right.
But it was just going to be brutal training. We had no idea what we were in for. The night before we were supposed to go, this British Royal Marine Commando major, takes us out on the town, and we just get shit-faced. I mean, just annihilated. We get back at like 04, and we're like, "Sir, we got to turn in. Like, we're supposed to leave in the morning." And he's like, fuck it, mate."
Yeah, just freaking go.
Yeah, and then we wake up. We're bloodshot eyes. We probably reek of alcohol. I know we reek of alcohol because none of us got the shower. And I remember going and linking up with our Royal Marine like NCO, and he looks at us. He's like, "Are you mates able to check out a rifle?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we're good." That makes for a long day.
Yeah, and then from there we proceeded into this juniors / seniors course, which was freaking like 72 to 96 hours of continuous operations. You didn't sleep. It was like you get a frago. Whoever like the designated patrol leader was, like comes up and writes his op order, and everybody else makes a train model. He gives the op order. You go out, you conduct the mission, you come back, and the second you get back, they assign a new patrol leader, a new APL, and then they drop a frago on you, and your train model had to be destroyed before you stepped off, and so you had to rebuild the train model. And this went on for like 72 hours. It was nuts.
What rank were you when you did that?
A gunnery sergeant.
Holy shit! Okay, yeah. Rock on.
I mean, there was a lieutenant, myself, and then we had a couple sergeants and corporals with us.
I got you. And this was an 8. You got picked to this for an AT?
I did this in conjunction with our AT. It could have been, I could have done either or, but I wanted to do both because we were going to Bridgeport.
Okay.
And so when I went over there, I did the Royal Marine deal, and then I came back, and then our AT was like the next month. So we went to Bridgeport, and the Royal Marines came with us to Bridgeport. So,
yeah, that's kind of how he was. Like, I don't know where he was getting it from, but he would freaking like, and he was never like not operationally ready, but he drank a lot. So, but he was professional about it. So I just remember him saying one night, he goes, "Sergeant Gingles, I'm pissed." I was like, why are you mad? He goes, "No, I'm pissed." I was like, "What the fuck are you mad about?" He goes, "No, I'm not mad. I'm pissed drunk." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Got it." But he was a freak. That guy was awesome.
So is this on the same ship from that same time frame?
Yeah, that's me and Sergeant Patton. He actually lives in Shreveport, and we still see each other pretty regularly. And like this guy, like we were both sergeants. We both tried to outdo each other all the time. So like some of the stuff I did as a sergeant, like holy shit, I'd be in jail 10 times. Some of the stuff we did. I remember at Coronado waking the entire company up, me and him, and making them go to the E Club. Now, if you did that now, you'd get freaking filleted.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember we just woke the whole company up at like 1 o'clock in the morning, got them out in formation, and told them they were all going to the E Club. So you can't do that shit now.
Man, obviously you were in a whole generation before I was, and I feel the same way about when I came in. Like the stuff we did in the early 2000s.
Oh yeah.
Trying to do that stuff now, it's just like, no way, buddy.
I just remember, and look, I'm not saying we were better, or all I'm saying is a generational or cultural difference. That's the best way for me to say it. We fought a lot. I lived in physical fear as a PFC and Lance Corporal, because if you got out of line, it didn't take much.
Right.
But we were physically rough with each other. Pink bellies were popular. You get pink belly with shower shoes. We screwed with each other incessantly. You didn't let anybody know something bothered you, because if they found out, if somebody in your platoon found out something bothered you, we would pick that scab for a freaking month. Like, I'm talking, and it would not go away. It was incessant. So you just didn't let anybody know anything bothered you. But we did. We were physical, So, but I think, like, watching my son go through his training, and like watching him go through IMC, the new program at SOI, I can have a tactical conversation with a PFC rifleman on a majors level. Not that that's great or whatever, but I could have a conversation with my son talking shop, and he knew exactly what tactical control measures were, loading how to load a support by fire position under suppression, task purpose, all those things, with a brand new PFC in the Marine Corps. So IMC, from what I could tell as a helicopter dad, it's kind of like being a soccer mom. That the training that these kids are getting now is head and shoulders above, what we got. I think the difference, generationally and culturally speaking, we were physically hard because we were hard on each other, and super disciplined, but I don't think we were as tactically proficient back then as we are today. And I think a lot of it has to do with technology, but it also has to do with I think the Marine Corps over time just figures out how to train better.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right on that.
You want to hear this? So this is cool. This is the cool thing about how small the Marine Corps is. So my son checks into Charlie Company at SOI on the East Coast, and his chief instructor is Staff Sergeant Chambers from the I&I staff at Bossier City.
Wow.
Which was freaking cool as shit. And then the senior enlisted Marine there, Master Guns Aiken, he and I had served together. I was a lieutenant, he was a staff sergeant. He was in 3-6, and I was in 2nd Tank Battalion. And we did a CAX together. So I knew Master Guns Aiken, and I knew Staff Sergeant Chambers. So I'm just glad my son's not a shitbird, because I'd have heard about it.
Yeah, the Marine Corps is such a small place. I mean,
yeah.
When I went to Afghanistan in like 2011, 2012 timeframe, I ran into 3 different Marines that I had served with back in like 2003 and 2004 in Iraq. And all 3 of these guys were in different infantry battalions. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy how small it is.
Yeah. So when I went to Iraq, I was a captain, and I was a tank company executive officer for Bravo Company 2nd Tanks. And my company commander, when I ran into him in Iraq, was a major, or I'm sorry, I think he was a lieutenant colonel at the time, but major lieutenant colonel, but he was over the MIT team that our company had given, not over, he was on, I think he was like the OPSO for the MIT team or something. He was he was on their staff. But he was in Iraq the same time I was there. I ran into him because I got picked to do a investigation for a tank wreck, because I was the only there was a section of tanks that were towing a tank, and they had a wreck, and the battalion, because I had been an 03 or been an 1802. I was the only officer in the battalion that was even qualified to do this investigation. We got tagged to do the investigation because it happened in our AO in Iraq. And I'm glad it was me, because I was able to save the tank crew from getting in trouble, because we figured out from the investigation that it was a mechanical failure on the tank that was being towed that caused the wreck. So that's the one investigation I did as an officer that I was very proud of, because I actually saved those guys from getting hammered. But as I was doing the investigation, I found through the gal, I think he was a Major Bardorf. And so we started talking about the investigation. I sent him all of my findings, and he had just left Marcorps Syscoms as the tank guy. And he's the one that confirmed my findings through his experience at Marcorps Syscom. The Marine Corps was overusing those tanks, and they found out that the torsion bars were going bad in tanks earlier than what the Marine Corps thought they were going. That their shelf, or they're not their shelf life, but their use life was, say, like 10,000 hours. Well, that got shrunk to like 2,000 because of all the use they were using them in Iraq. And that's what happened. The torsion bar on the tank broke, and it caused the tow tank, the torsion bar broke, and it caused to get all whirly, and the tanks ended up rolling over. Luckily, nobody was killed. Nobody got fried for being stupid or whatever. But anyway, so I ran into him, and then I ran into, this is the coolest thing. I had gone to Al Assad, and I ran into Sergeant Major Cuevas, who had been in weapons company with me when I was a corporal many years back. So same thing, just small Marine Corps. You always run into somebody that, that you've known. So and that's one of the things I told my son. I was like, hey, always do the freaking right thing, because you're building a reputation. You're always going to run into some guy that, you knew 10 years ago, and you're going to remember the dumb shit you did as a PSC together. So your reputation is just, you're making your reputation when you step on those footprints.
So let's go back to your career. What made you decide to go from being an enlisted Marine, getting out, and then coming back in as an officer?
So the I at the time was a guy named Major Brown. His dad was a general, super good guy. I honestly wanted to become an officer because I just felt like there were things going on in the Marine Corps that maybe I could change just a little bit. I think that's like the only picture I have as a lieutenant, or one of few. That's really, not to sound like a do-gooder or anything, that's really why I wanted to get commissioned. I just wanted to be in a position where I could take care of Marines.
Those are some jungle boots you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and at that point we were wearing name tapes. So, and I'm pretty sure that picture is right before we changed over to digitals.
Yeah, I was gonna say there were still plenty of us wearing green jungles when I came in.
Oh yeah, and it's crazy how when we switched to digitals, so at Lejeune, the only people that could get them at first were the sergeants. So, and then during that transition period, we didn't have the rough out boots yet, so we were wearing black leather boots or jungle boots with digital camis. And then as boots became available, so you have a formation. There was nobody in a uniform. Everybody was in digitals with the right boots, or digitals with the old boots, or not digitals, or the tricolors with jungle boots. And then we had, for a long time, we just had the tricolored Gore-Tex tops, so they didn't match. But it was, I want to say it was probably 6 months until everybody kind of got their uniforms right. So
yeah, there was a cutoff date where you had to have full blown, because I remember same thing. Half of us were wearing tricolor stuff, the other half were wearing digitals, and then once the Coyote boots came in, we're like, whoa, we don't have to polish these. So it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
most of us were wearing our old Woodland camis with the Coyote boots.
Yep.
Because there's nothing that's more shitty than coming out of the field, and then it's like last thing you want to do is polish your black fucked up boots.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing, if you go back to when I was a PFC, when I first checked into 1.6, you could wear the Vietnam era slant pocket camis as long as you had a matching set. So you had to have a matching cover, a blouse, and trousers. And so there were a bunch of Marines in my first rifle company that would wear Vietnam era tricolored slant pocket camis.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's that when you, and I hate to say it like this because it sounds stupid, but when you end up being in the Marine Corps for 30 something years, you see, so when I qualified with an M16A2, my squad leaders had also qualified with A1s and carried A1s in the fleet. We had A2s, and then we transitioned to M16A4s, the M4s, and then now the M27. So when I got out, there were M27s in the company, M16A4s, or M4s, and then M16A4s, all in the same company. And I think now they're probably I don't know if the reserves have transitioned all the way to the M27s, but I know when I got out, there was a mix of weapons. So 3 service rifles, or 4 if you let's see, the M16A2, the M4, M16A4, and the M27. So 4 service rifles, and then numerous uniform changes. Like early on, we had red silkies. Then we had the green silkies, and then they went out. Then they went away to whatever they call them now. And then gray sweats, then green sweats, and then this windsuit thing they have now. And hell, that thing may be gone now. I don't know.
I don't even see anybody. And obviously, I'm not active duty, but I never see anybody wearing that thing anymore.
Yeah, I had one. So when I got, at some point when I showed back up at Bravo Company, they had some in supply, and whoever I checked into supply with gave me a set of them, and I think I ended up giving those to my son. But yeah, it's been interesting to watch all the changes, and now we're like at change warp speed. Like,
yeah,
that's when I knew it was getting time for me to retire. I couldn't keep up with all the shit we had.
Yeah.
But like, I remember going to the field in Charlie Company. We had 1 set of MVGs per squad, and we had 1 Starlight scope, which I got saddled with carrying, and you had to carry it in the aluminum carrying case, was like this big Pelican case thing, and then it had a zippered bag that it went in, but the thing was the size of a 2-liter Coke bottle and didn't work for shit. You'd shoot. Yeah.
Got one right here.
Yeah, that thing.
That's no joke.
Yeah, and you had to carry it in your pack, so you didn't have room for shit else in your pack.
Yeah, especially an Alice pack.
Yeah. We got lucky. We had the largest, so we had a little bit of room.
So what was your first deployment, and what unit were you with as an officer?
So I checked into Delta Company 2nd Tanks. I was a platoon commander for 2nd Platoon Delta Company 2nd Tanks. And our first deployment was to CAX. And I think over my 30 years, I think I've done, 16 CAXs, Mojave Vipers, and whatever they're calling it now. But it was in a tank battalion, we would do doubles. So we would go out and be there for like 2.5 months. And then
if I can just interject real quick, because I know there's a lot of people watching don't know what CAX is.
Yeah.
And this is what they used to call it anyways.
It's a combined arms exercise.
Yeah, it's like the major culminating event. You got everybody there: tanks, air, infantry. It's massive exercise.
Yeah. So when they and again, this is, I'm showing my age, but back then you would a regimental headquarters would go to 29 Palms, and then 2 infantry battalions would deploy to 29 Palms, and they would do, each one would do a month, like I think it's a 24-day, 25, 23, 26 days, something like that, exercise where at the end, the whole battalion is maneuvering. So you do, back then we do the mechanized assault course. So you do a day and night. So it's a daytime assault with a breach, and then you sit in the defense and repel an attack. And this is all live fire. And then you do range 400, range 410 alpha. And then you do a bunch of like Fisk X's. So you're up on the hill coordinating aviation, rotary and fixed wing aviation, and artillery and mortar suppression. So you're getting all your your combined arms battle drills down, and then it ends with the FinX, which is the whole battalion doing a major I think it's isn't FinX 2.5 days, something like that.
I don't remember.
I just know as when I was a tank lieutenant, the company executive officer for a tank company fights his tank, and then he's the FIST team leader. And the tank FIST team for CAXs back then, the FIST team leader for the tanks had control of fires for like 80% of that CAX. So a lot of this freaking gray hair, which I keep cut off, is because of that. Your ass is in the freaking sling. But I will say, when I checked into second tanks, the battalion OPSO and some other of the senior staff officers did a very good job of training all the lieutenants to grow into being FIST team leaders, and we had our shit together. Because if the tank company screwed up the CAX, it would ruin it for the whole battalion. So, did you
deploy at all outside of the United States?
No, not with tanks. No, and I got out right before I EAS'd right before the invasion, and I was home taking care of my family, and then I immediately went back in the reserves, and I was at India Company 323, and as soon as I got there, I said, "Hey, I want to go to IOC. Get me an active duty seat at IOC." So I went through IOC as a captain, which I don't recommend because I was old. But
well, not to mention a freaking Gulf War veteran.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I went through IOC with a staff sergeant who had just come back from an Iraq deployment. And I don't know who talked this guy into going to IOC or thinking that was going to be a good idea after coming back from Iraq. But that guy, God bless him, he did well, but he was not a happy camper. But it was me. So it was me, that staff sergeant, another reserve captain, and a bunch of brand new second lieutenants that had just finished the basic school. But it was that was a wild school. That's the best school I've ever been to in my life. They call it the man school. It's the man school. Thank God I was in good shape.
I firmly believe, I think the Marine Corps just does a exceptional job of producing infantry officers, because I think back over 20 years of service, my service, and I can literally only think of maybe 2 that I thought were subpar. The rest of them were all pretty squared away individuals.
Yeah. So, and this is true with like my son coming out of IMC and with officers coming out of IOC, that they're the best trained individuals in the Marine Corps because they've gotten the latest and greatest, and they have done it. So like for a lieutenant, you do 6 months at the basic school, which is you're basically learning how to be a rifle platoon commander the whole 6 months you're there. And some of the field ops we did at TBS were very good, almost as good as the IOC ones. And then for IOC, you're in the field all the time. And it's I can say that without a doubt, the Marine Corps absolutely 100% does a great job at those 2 schools. Just seeing my son and the product that was produced, the training that he got, and then the way that he could articulate and talk about things at a higher level than what you would think. And then lieutenants coming out of OC they definitely got their shit together. They just have to learn how to take what they've learned and then kind of figure their way out when they get to the fleet, because the higher in the tree you climb, the more monkeys are looking at your ass. So being a lieutenant that's a strange time. And it was not easy for me, and I was a staff sergeant when I got commissioned, so I can just imagine what it was like for a fresh lieutenant that, just that his Marine Corps time was OCS, TBS, and IOC.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. I totally agree with that. I think the Marine Corps does a great job of that.
So what was your first deployment coming back to the reserves? Now you're an infantry officer. Talk us through that.
Yeah. So my first deployment was, other than ATs, I was checked into Indy Company 323. I was there as a platoon commander, and because we didn't have many officers, I dual-hatted. I was a company executive officer, and then I was also a rifle platoon commander kind of at the same time, which is a weird deal. But at that point, I was a captain, so it was easy for me to do both. We went, I don't know. I know we went to Camp Bullis in Texas one time. Now that you asked me the question, I don't remember all the, but I did a couple of ATs, and then we knew that we were going to get activated.
What year was this?
We got activated early in 2007. But so we got activated I think in the spring. I just remember I was getting my hair cut on a Sunday, and my cell phone rang, and it was the colonel telling me that he had unofficial word that sometime the next week we would get the call. It was early in the year, so we still had all of our in the Marine Corps fashion, we had all that money for that whole year. So we started doing super drill. So we would show up at drill for like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we did a pre-mob AT. We did we went to Darcy, the Direct Action Resource Center, which is probably outside of the Marine Corps, that's the best training I've ever done. Our entire battalion did combat pistol, combat carbine, and advanced urban raid course, TCCC with live tissue. Every Marine in the battalion, I'm talking about from the colonel all the way down to the lowest ranking rifleman, our chaplain, everybody, the four, every Marine in our battalion went through those 4 courses. And then towards the end, the NCOs did a urban raid. I think it's an urban raid planning course. It was like a miniature ranger school, but in an urban environment. And then so we did that, and then I left. So I did Darcy for I think 2 weeks. We left Darcy and drove to New Orleans and did the Marine Corps martial art instructor course. So when I got home from that month and a half, I had a cracked rib, a broken toe. I had been shot with simunition so much, I had bruises like all over me, and I'd gotten shot by a RPG simulator in the shoulder. I had a big freaking bloody mess scar on my shoulder. And I remember walking in the house and going to the bathroom and taking my clothes off. I was about to take a shower. My wife came in and she said, "What in the hell happened to you?" And I said, "Just go get me a 6-pack of beer. Let me take a shower and I'll explain the last month." So we did that. So we did all this training, but we were not activated yet. So we would do like a course, and then we would come home and we'd be like on leave for like 3 or 4 days, and we'd have to be somewhere else. And then once we got mobilized, we did a mobilization AT at Camp Gruber in Arkansas. We came home. I think I was home for maybe like 4 days, and we went to our ILOC was at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and the barracks that we were assigned. This is another cool thing about how small the Marine Corps is. The barracks that I checked out of was HP 425. I lived in room 207 as a corporal. When we went back as a mobilized infantry battalion, our company got put in HP 425, and I lived in room 100 as a captain. So we were there for a month, which was pretty interesting because the battalion had sent an advon to 2nd MEF several months before we were getting mobilized to do all of our training coordination. And the people that they met with, the officers that they met with, said, "Hey, we're going to roll out the red carpet for you guys. We got all your ranges locked on." So they came back from their, what is that? I think it's what is the damn acronym? I'm getting old, so I don't remember. But basically, it's like a planning.
McPeepee?
No, it's shit. Anyway, so they went the INIs and a bunch of the company commanders, the battalion, the OPSO, all went and did all this pre-deployment coordination. Well, the people that they coordinated with between the time that they were there and the time we showed up got sent to Iraq. So when we got there, we had like the C team, and they didn't know what we were there for. They were like, "Y'all are just here doing your 2 weeks." We're like, "No, we're doing our ILOC." So we had to totally rebuild the battalion's training plan, and we could not get, because like at Lejeune, you got to get your ranges 90 days out. Well, we were only going to be there for like maybe 40 days. So there were myself, Major Draymond, who was my boss, and another couple of guys that were had been on active duty at Lejeune and still had friends in the other battalions. So we started making like bro phone calls like, "Hey, I'm looking at the scheduling on range control, and you're on this range. Can we piggyback on the range?" So we quickly figured out in a meeting, like, and I think I actually said this. I was like, "Look, we're reservists. We're used to working on the weekend. None of these active duty Marines train on the weekends. We'll just get those ranges on the weekends." So we would train non-live fire stuff, like say Monday to Thursday, and then we would hump to a range and piggyback on the range with an active duty company or an active duty unit that had that range. We would take the range from them, pick up their mess, let them leave, and then we would train through the weekend. And so that's how we survived that ILOC. And then we left from there to do Mojave Viper. And then I actually left Mojave Viper early for Advon and was doing a combat raid with 3-1. Or no, I'm sorry. Alpha 1-3 is who we ripped in with. While they were finishing, the rest of the company was finishing the Finex back at 29 Palms. So I was in Iraq kind of getting some, and they were back there getting some at 29 Palms. So I remember landing at Haditha Dam, typical Marine Corps, like 3 o'clock in the morning. It was a big firefight going on down in Haditha. We just sitting up there watching the freaking tracer rounds go back and forth.
I've had a couple of interviews of guys I used to serve with in 1-4 that went on to 3-1, and they also served at Haditha Dam.
Yeah.
Later years. I wonder if it was that, or no, you said you were leading 1-3, right?
Yeah. So one of the So here's another interesting thing. When we got mobilized, the battalion didn't have enough officers, so we got to actually, I think, 8 active duty lieutenants and captains from all over active duty infantry battalions in the Marine Corps to augment our battalion for this deployment. So one of the guys actually he's a really good friend of mine. He had been with 3-1 when they cleared Haditha Dam, and he knew the
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Yep, that's it.
Yeah,
That's actually our side. So that was Kilo Company 323 side of the dam. So when we would go to the dam, that was the side we'd come in on. I've been right there a whole bunch of times.
So that's again small Marine Corps, because that picture is from a buddy of mine that served in 3-1. Went on a 3rd combat tour to Iraq, and they were at that dam.
Yeah, one good thing about doing this podcast with you is you'd ask me about Iraq pictures, and I've got to get those pictures. They're somewhere on a computer. I've got to get them off and get them saved, because if not, I'm going to lose them. But yeah, so we finished at 29 Palms, and we flew out of March Air Force Base, and then landed in Kuwait, and I think we were at Camp Virginia, processing into the theater in process, or whatever they call it. It's where you get your first ammunition. And then we flew to Al Asad on C-141. And then from Al Asad, we flew into our battalion's AO in CH-53s. And then we ripped in with Alpha 1-3, and then we were relieved by Kilo 3-1. So
what was your guys' mission there? You just force protection for the dam, or?
No, we only went to the dam we call it going to the mall. We just went up there we'd had once a week. I had a commander's update brief that would change days. So it would be a different day each week. And then that's where our battalion's logistics operations center was at. There was a special forces compound was up there. The MIT team had some of their headquarters there. And then I think most of our H&S company was there. There was a KBR, a contingent of KBR people up there. There was a British security contracting team that was headquarters out of there. Their job was to guard. There was a government official from the United States Department of Agriculture that was there, that they were honchoing around the AO. But we had we were Task Force East, and our mission was basically just do what we could to return AO Triad to normalcy. That's kind of what. So we did a lot of patrolling. So the major town that we had was Barwana. Then we had the Sakrons, which were up Route Phoenix going towards. So you went up Route Phoenix. Route Phoenix ran from Barwana up to Beji. And we had our AO, our company, which was Kilo 323, Romeo Battery 312. We had a Army police transition team, a CAGDET, a HET team, our human exploitation team. So interrogators. We gave a platoon to the MIT, which was with some Iraqi infantry battalion. I don't remember which battalion. But our biggest town in our AO was Barwana, which is right across the river from Haditha. And then we had the Sakrons. We had Checkpoint 1, which was the intersection between Route Phoenix and Route Raptors, which ran across to the dam. And Checkpoint 1 was a bad IED spot, so we ended up putting a firm base there. So we had a reinforced rifle squad at Checkpoint 1. We had a platoon in Barwana. We had a platoon at our Cop Ellis, which was where my COC was at. And then we had a platoon and a patrol base down at a little place called Sinjik, which is kind of the bottom end of Barwana. There's a big railroad bridge down there. And then we had a bunch of fixed sites. We had TCP Jones. We had the Playboy Mansion, Dirty South. We had a patrol base in Barwana. And then we ended up moving the berm out while I was there. We moved TCP Jones. We demilled Dirty South and the Playboy Mansion. And then the ECP that Sergeant Major Ellis was killed at by a suicide bomber, we demilled it. It was an entry control point. So an entry control point is where pedestrians could come through. And then a TCP is a traffic control point where you could have pedestrians and vehicles come through. We had a squad, a reinforced squad at TCP Jones. So I had freaking Marines everywhere. And then we had a mobile assault platoon, which was, mounted in Humvees. They were doing patrols all over the place. And I think we ended up doing, 17 company-sized raids, which is kind of it's not really, it was never a company because we had to maintain all of our legacy or enduring tasks. So like all of our fixed sites, we had to man those. And then for us to do an operation, we would have to pull Marines from different platoons, or we'd pull a platoon and then pull Marines to cover down on their fixed sites. So I think the biggest element we ever sent out was probably a platoon of Marines and then maybe a platoon size of Iraqi police or Iraqi army. But we did some good stuff. We did a raid and we cleared a peninsula on Lake Codicea we called the Donkey Dick. So the Navy had a special boat unit operating in the Euphrates River and the lake. So we had the element that I got put over because I'd been in small boats way back when. I did the riverine part. So we cleared these arms cache sites or suspected cache sites along that peninsula. And then the last one that we cleared, we did an amphibious landing in these small boats. And then we linked up on foot with a dismounted element that had been coming down from the north and cleared a big wadi complex that ended in and around that where that peninsula hung down into the lake. And then we had a motorized element that had come while all that was going on and linked up with us. So we basically had, I think that's the biggest op we did. But it was amphibious or riverine, foot and vehicular. And then we left in helos, and then the Marines that had come up there in trucks ended up doing a motorized patrol back down through the AO and back down to Cop Ellis. But we did a bunch. We did 17, which is a bunch. I remember when we ripped out, I told the guy how many ops we had done. He was like, "Holy shit, you guys worked." So we worked our asses off.
I can't imagine. Were you the XO on this?
Yeah, I was a task force executive officer, which I was a company XO. But since we had the battery, we got lucky to get the battery because they had so many lieutenants. I never had to stand, like I was never a watch officer. The only time I was ever like a watch officer in the COC is if we had an element that was going out to do a raid, I would be in the COC the whole time they were out, so to help fix problems for them while they were gone. But I would bounce back and forth between doing that and being like an element leader for, like, I know one time we did a helo raid and I was the hook for that. My role, like I was kind of like an Uber platoon commander, really, but I did a lot of XO stuff too, like just the mundane crap of, like, I worked on our damn CMR the whole time I was there. it was a freaking shit show. When I got there, we had a whole battalion's worth of 81 millimeter mortars in our freaking armory box. We had a ISO container that I think we had like, I don't know, like 30 shotguns. We had a whole battalion's worth of 81 millimeter mortars. I can't remember how many damn machine guns we had, but we had machine guns everywhere. And then vehicles, like just keeping up with all that crap and then getting it right so we could do it. Because it was an utter mess when we got there. And that's kind of officer shit, but I remember that being a pain in the ass the whole time I was there.
I bet they just gave all that shit to the Iraqis too. They didn't bring it back.
Oh yeah, we turned it over. So we ripped out. Our battalion ripped out. A company relieved us because that's when we were drawing. We were drawing Iraq down, and Afghanistan was flaring up. So when we got relieved, we turned that whole AO over to a company, and they were spread very freaking thin. In fact, we were back at Lejeune doing our demob and found out that they had hit an IED right out from Cop Ellis, an intersection that we went through all the time. But I think there was a sandstorm, and they did not do anything during that sandstorm, and they got hit right after they left. But we made the decision that we would operate during those, and we would just do. We decided it was safer to operate without having an air CASEVAC. So if we had casualties during those times, we'd just have to get them out by ground. So we did some planning for that. So in case we had, a casualty, we could take care of them. But we operated during sandstorms for that reason, because that's when, if you stop operating, that somebody was going to do something. But we found a lot of freaking IEDs, a lot of arms caches. We had very limited, direct firefights. But it was, I would say our deployment was more like being a cop in a bad neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but you're finding, I think the biggest arms or biggest cache we found, I've got pictures of it somewhere. We found like 4 barrels full of artillery propellant. I want to say probably 40 to 50 82 millimeter mortar HE rounds. At least 20 152 millimeter HE rounds that they use to make IEDs with, a sniper rifle, a mortar system, and then a bunch of just small arms ammunition, a dead body, and something else.
It's kind of random.
Yeah. The guy had been shot in the back. It was just a skeleton, but he still had his clothes on. He had been shot. He had a bullet hole in the back of his head. So somebody whacked.
Yeah.
But that was all that shit was on those islands in the Euphrates River between us and the rest of the battalion. So.
So what happened after you came back from that deployment?
After I came back from that deployment, I couldn't freaking order a pizza. I was so decided out. I actually got out. I went to the IRR, and I went to work for a company up in Indiana. And I was out for, to be honest with you, I had to go back and look at my my record and see how long I was actually out. But one of the guys that I was in Iraq with ended up back at 123 as a battalion commander, and called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing? You want to get back in the Marine Corps?" And I was like, I kind of want to, but since I was out, I'd gotten this tattoo. And at the time the Marine Corps was pretty hot and heavy on tattoos. So I fought through the bureaucracy because of my artwork, and got back to Bravo 123. And that's where me and you went to Germany together.
Right.
Yeah, that's the best. That's the best. That's the best damn deployment I've ever been on in my life. The only thing
Oh,
wrong with that deployment is we had to come home.
yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, I think I sent you a picture of the Krakow. Me and you standing in front of the ship at Swinjewski.
No, I didn't get that one from
If you
you.
didn't get it, I'll send it to you when we get off of this thing.
Okay, I did get some pictures though from that. I'll put them
Okay.
up as you talk about that.
Yeah. So, what a freaking awesome trip that was. Yeah, that's our ball.
Yeah.
That's my little short ass.
Let's see. I'm pulling up some ball tops photos, but you can start talking about your time at Bravo.
Yeah, so I checked in. We did a change of command, and I think I think literally walking back into the HTC, we had a kid that had said he was going to kill himself. Remember that?
Yeah.
It was like literally, I had been the company commander for like 5 minutes, and then Colonel Cowart called me and said, "Hey, we've got to send a company to do this thing in Germany called Baltops." And I was like, "Hey, I want to go. I want it to be Bravo Company." And so I start selling. He's like, "Look, I've already made the decision. You're going. You're gonna keep talking. You're gonna talk me out of it." So we went to the coolest thing about another cool thing about that deployment though is we got to go to Lejeune for what did we go for 10 days?
Yeah.
So we were at Lejeune for 10 days, which was awesome for the company because like a reserve rifle company doesn't get to be around active duty Marines like on an active duty base very much because a lot of times we'll go to these weird Army bases or National Guard bases or something like that. So we got 10 days with the company in kind of a semi-garrison environment because we did, and you'll have to help me remember all this, but we did the Helo Dunker or the Amtrak Dunker, swim qual. Did we do any live fire? Did we BZO or anything? I don't remember.
I believe so.
And then we got to go out to the ship.
Yeah.
So we were supposed to actually stay on the ship overnight, and we didn't because the weather was getting bad. And they basically told me when we got out to the ship, they said, "Look, if y'all stay out here, the weather gets bad. We may have to transit up the coast to Little Creek. And if that happens, y'all are going to get extended on this 10 days. So I made the decision, me and I just talked to him the other day, the I&I company gunny. What was his name? I got his, Jason Gunny
Chapman. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me make sure I got that right. Yeah. So we were talking to the CO of the ship, and he told us what was going on. So we just went out to the ship, did a touch and go, kind of showed the Marines around the ship, and then I think I just did the key leaders. I think everybody else stayed in the tracks, and we ran up and looked at the ship real quick, and then came back to the shore. When we got back, we did a quick like amphibious raid, just a rehearsal for the deployment. We hit a few things on Camp Lejeune, and then we came back. So we got to meet the active duty Amtrackers that we're working with on ball tops and the ship. So that was good. But I think it was just better for the company to be at Lejeune doing normal training like a regular active duty unit for 10 days. I think that and you'll have a different perspective on that, but I think that was probably the best part of that.
Well, I gotta share this because before we get to ball tops, so when you guys go into the Marine Corps, if you spend any amount of time, you will run into officers that they get to the point where, when they've been in the Marine Corps long enough, they just don't give a fuck, right? They're gonna go with what's right and not try to appease anybody. Well, this is absolutely Major Gingles. Gulf War veteran, OIF veteran. I mean, he didn't give a fuck. And before we were leaving for ball tops, the battalion sergeant major tried to task our company with giving up our best corporals to go to an NCO school in lieu of going to this ball tops.
Oh yeah.
This big Baltic NATO operation over in Europe. They wanted to send these guys to corporal's course. And our CO was like, fuck you. Like, we're taking these guys, like, we're not giving up our best guys to miss out on this training exercise.
Yeah. So remember the question you asked me about why I got commissioned? That one conversation between me and my boss was the distillation of exactly why I got commissioned. And so there were some things going on in the background. First of all, it was not the Marine Corps' formal corporal's course. It was a sergeant major who I like and respect was doing a corporal's course for AT. Okay. So it was a battalion run school. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think it's called MIDS data. It's when the Marine Corps buys your tickets for travel for deployment. Okay. Well, we had worked and solidified our roster, and it was in the system. So that's the second thing. And I'll come back to that in a minute because that's really what helped. Then the third thing is I never got a formal tasker from our Battalion 3 giving me the order to provide 4 NCOs for corporal's course. I never got an email. I never got a LOI. I never got any formal tasking. Okay. So I had taken my sons to the Buffalo River on a weekend, flowed the Buffalo. We're driving back, and Major Diaz calls me and says, "Hey, are you tracking giving up these 4 Marines for a corporal's course?" And I was like, "Well, when is it?" He goes, "Well, it's going to be during AT." And I just DNA reaction. I said, "Well, I'm not fucking sending anybody." And he's like, "Well, you're going to have to." And I said, "No, I'm not, because if we pull those kids off this roster, the Mar 4 Res is going to have a shit fit. 4th Mar Div is going to have a shit fit. 23rd Marines is going to shit. And it's all going to come back down to 123, our boss. I'm not sending them." And then somebody picked the Marines that they wanted to go, and it wasn't me. And it was the best freaking machine gunner I had was one of them. And I'm like, I'm not giving up my freaking machine gun section leader to go learn how to fold his damn underwear and march Marines around on a parade deck at Houston while we're doing amphibious training that the Marine Corps hadn't done for 10 years because we've been doing shit in the desert. Like, there is no freaking way. No. So I got off the phone with him, and I didn't think anything else about it. Because at the time he was the XO. So, and we were friends. So it was a friendly conversation, but I was being direct. Like, I'm not doing it because I hadn't been tasked, and I don't work for the sergeant major. Sorry, I just don't. So, I want to say it was maybe a week later. I was at my girlfriend's apartment, and I had a few whiskeys, and I get this phone call, and it's the colonel. And we had a pretty lively conversation, and I just said, hey, so before this phone call, the battalion sergeant major put me on blast on a group email, basically throwing me under the bus. And it was so bad, I just didn't even respond. I was like, I'm not even responding to that. So then the colonel calls me, and we got into it on the phone, and I explained to him that, one, it's the best thing for the Marines. They're going to get way more out of going on this deployment than they are going to corporal's course. They can do corporal's course any other time. You've never formally tasked me. I don't have an LOI, an email, nothing. And if I pull them, or we pull them, you're going to get your ass ripped. Well, it was so bad he hung up on me. And I'm not proud of that, but that's the way the conversation went. But the long story short is those 4 Marines went on that deployment. And I won not because of me. It's because they had already been put in the system for travel. And when you pull, if they'd have pulled them, I think our tickets for each individual Marine was like $800 and something to fly to Poland. And I think that he realized that it was not going to be good for him if he did it. So, but I just was like, there's no way in hell. Like, nope, sorry. So,
yeah. And I mean, that was probably the coolest thing that a lot of those reserve Marines ever got to do as infantrymen.
Absolutely. It's that's the best peacetime deployment I've done in 30 damn years. You know, how many Marines do you know that's gotten to go to Germany? Germany, Poland, Latvia.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't land in Estonia, did we?
No.
I think we were supposed to go to Estonia and that got scrubbed for weather. But yeah, that's at Lejeune, right? Or is that?
No, that's on the Latvian beach, I believe.
Okay. That's either Latvia or Putlos. I think you're right. I think that is Latvia.
Yeah, because you were taking pictures with every smoking hot.
Oh yeah, yeah. How that started is when we landed in Latvia first, and when we would finish, we'd finish the little landing, which would be like 30 minutes. As soon as it was over, they would release all of the reporters, and yeah, that's us going back into the ship. And then so I would get stuck doing interviews with the reporters. Well, the first person that I talked to in Latvia was a female Latvian general, and she wasn't like super attractive, but that kind of started it. And then over the radio, the Marines, when they would see a good looking girl, they would call dibs, So when I found out about that, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to start. So so we did, I got a picture with a good looking German reservist. She was like in the some kind of logistics battalion or something that was doing an AT at Putlos, and then a really pretty Navy admiral's aide in Poland. She was beautiful. But yeah, it became kind of a funny thing that was going on during that I didn't know why I started doing it, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna get a picture with a good looking girl in each one of these countries. And then we got 2 nights of liberty at the beginning, waiting for the ship to leave in Swinjewski, Poland. Then we got at the end, we were in Kiel for 2 nights there too, right?
Yeah, that was a fantastic time.
Yeah. So, and then all the training we got to do at Putlos was amazing, because we were on that live fire range for a full week, and then the machine gunners have been there, or the weapons platoon Marines have been there for 10 days?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I actually compiled all the video I took out there and put it into a video.
Oh, really?
It's uploaded on my channel. Yeah.
Yeah. I need to go in there and look at it, because there'll be some good memories of that.
Yeah. I'll send you a link.
Yeah. I'm not, hang on a second.
So we do the ball tops deal, and that was pretty freaking amazing. And then we come back, and then I think you left shortly after that, didn't you?
Yeah. So I left in October. I had gotten pretty big into. I own or bought part of 2 gun companies, and one of them was pretty hot and heavy. So I was gone a lot. I just didn't think it was fair to the Marines for me to be a half-ass company commander. So I ended up not dropping, but I changed to, so again, Marine Corps, small Marine Corps. During all that, now full bird Colonel Bardorf, who had been Captain Bardorf when I was his company XO at Tanks, and then run back into him in Iraq in 2008 when he was there with the MIT team. He sends me a Facebook message and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, I'm desperately trying to avoid ended up on a battalion staff as a battalion OPSO. And he's like, well, and I explained to him what was going on with my civilian job and all the stuff that was going on. He's like, look, I can get you to 3 MEF on this IMADET. So I was like, and the IMADET thing, it allowed me to do a lot of my civilian job stuff, but then I could go to Okinawa or Korea and do a full month once or twice a year and do all my drills and my AT. And then for 10 months of the year, I didn't have to do anything. So all I had to do was, stay in shape. And I'd have to find out, I would coordinate with the INI at Bossier to do my CFT, PFT, and training and this annual stuff I had to do. And then I would go to Okinawa, and I was my official title was I was the assistant OPSO for current ops at 3 MEF. But when I would go over there, we would stand up the MEF Combat Operations Center, and I would end up being the senior watch officer either on the night shift or the day shift. And then one of the guys that ended up going over there with me was a guy that I'd served as a lieutenant with. So he's a lieutenant colonel now. He's I think he's close to retiring. I think he's in his last year right now. But he and I would go, we did that together that's where I was basically going to retire out of. And then COVID hit. And so COVID hit, and there was a weird year in there. I had like half my points, and I had to get the rest of my points doing stuff online. Like everybody was doing like teledrill and all that crazy shit.
Yeah.
And then, so luckily, I knew the INI at Bossier, and he found, he's really the reason I got my retirement. He found there was an off-BIC billet, which billet is BIC stands for billet ID code. It's an admin thing. It's where there's positions assigned to these reserve units that nobody knows about. Well, he found this off-BIC billet, and I basically was, for lack of better words, I was basically the reserve INI. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I was not in Bravo. I was not in 123's chain of command, but I got to finish my time there. And it was awesome because I basically got to retire where I started. So I would help, the INI get drills together, the training stuff done. And then I would go to on these planning teams to get drills set up or AT set up. And then the last thing that I did was we got tagged to evaluate 323's McCree or their McCrest at Fort Knox, Kentucky. So the last thing I did was evaluate Lima Company 323's final attack for the last day of their AT at Fort Knox, Kentucky, which was kind of cool because I'd been in Kilo Company. Major Miller, the INI at Bossier, he got tagged to be Kilo Company's evaluator. So I spent, I think, 10 days in the field with Lima 323. And then we all, at the end of it, we all linked back up on a range at Fort Knox and did a squad live fire attack range and there was something happened with that we didn't, something happened with range control or something. We did a condensed version of what we had originally planned to do. But that was it. I remember the last night in the field, me and Major Miller were sleeping in an LZ. What we would do is, so we had a day shift and a night shift. I had a gunny that was working with me that he had. So it was me, Staff Sergeant Krieg, another active duty INI sergeant, and then some corporals. We had the day part of Lima's evaluation team. And then I had a gunny Peck from 23rd Marine Regiment who had another staff sergeant and a sergeant and some corporals, and they did the night. So we would turn over with him. I would go check in with the regimental OPSO, give him my observations for the day. And then I would go link up with Major Miller, and then we'd go find a place to sleep on Fort Knox, just in an open LZ. And then I'd get up early in the morning, and then we'd separate, and I'd run back or get a ride back over to where Lima Company was at. And then I would catch up with him and then evaluate him for the day. And we did that cycle through that 10 days. So, but the last thing they did was a morning assault on a comm site or something. I don't remember. I got the maps around. I kept the map from that somewhere in here. I don't know, somewhere in my office. And then we came home, and I took my camis off, and while all that was going on, my son was in boot camp, and so I got to go to his graduation, and that was the last time I wore my uniform, was his graduation. So
you didn't have a retirement ceremony or anything?
No, I didn't, and I didn't. I caught a bunch of freaking grief from these colonels, because I decided that, one, I'm not special. Two, there's a bunch of Marines that do 4 years, 8 years, whatever, and they just get out and turn their shit in and walk out the gates. I was like, I'm not any different than them, so I'm not doing a retirement ceremony. So we kind of had we were going to do, a bunch of my civilian friends were going to go to the ball this year or last year, and because my official retirement date was 1 September 2021, but I did not. We were all going to go to the ball and kind of celebrate my retirement at the ball with the Marines, but they got mobilized, so they canceled the ball. They got mobilized, and we ended up just having a Christmas party, and that was kind of my retirement party. So I just kind of eased out the back door.
Well, I mean, the plus side is you started your career years ago with the grunts, and you ended it with the grunts.
Yep. I had and I will say that I had a very, very good run. And if I could hit the easy button and start all over again and do the exact same thing I'd do it in a millisecond. So
100%.
I would not give career advice to anybody, because I kind of ended up being able to kind of do what I wanted to do. But I would not change it for the world. So I had a great, great, great career, and I got to serve with some of the best people on the planet.
Right.
And, that's honestly, at the end of the day, just the people I was able to be around was what made it all great,
Well, just so we're a little bit over 2 hours here. If you could, and I know you already kind of dabbled in it a little bit. What do you do now that you're out of the Marine Corps? What's your
I'm a procurement forester for a company called West Rock. So in layman's terms, I buy a bunch of the trees that we cut down to make paper out of. And my boss, this is another Marine Corps thing. So my boss in my civilian job was in 81s with me when I was in college. So he's a forestry major too. So he got out of the Marine Corps, went to work for another company, and ended up coming back to West Rock. And then he hired me to do his job, because he was, when I got there, he was dual hat, and he was doing the regional fiber supply manager's job and the stumpage manager's job, which is what I do. So he hired me to do the stumpage part, and now he just does the regional manager's job. But we had actually served in 81s together when I was in college. So I do that, and then I own part of a company that's actually in West Monroe called Outlaw Ordnance. We do custom laser engraving and Cerakoting for several major firearms manufacturers, and we've also started doing boat electronics mounts. We've got a website, so you can go on there if you're curious about what we do. We have a pretty good website. So I help with that where I can, and take care of my family, keeping up with I got a son in high school who is a freshman, and then I have one son who is on active duty at Camp Lejeune in an infantry battalion there. So He just checked in 2 weeks ago. So I get to keep up. I get to live vicariously through my son now. So I passed him the flag at Paris Island in October. And so I get to keep up with him. So I'm like a soccer mom, but I call myself an infantry dad.
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
And I actually talked to Gunny Chappell. I had sent him a text message, and he was on a deployment. Well, I guess they got close enough to the shore for his cell phone to work, and he called me like 2 weeks ago. He should be getting pretty close to being home. Awesome. And then, like I said, Staff Sergeant Chambers was my son's chief instructor at SOI, and he's getting ready to go to 29 Palms. I think he's advising the next class. So he's not the chief instructor, but he's basically handing over with the guy that's taking his place. And he's going to do one more cycle at Lejeune. So they probably got that new class is 14 weeks long. I think they're probably a week, 2 weeks into their next class. So he's probably got another 12 weeks there, and then he'll get ready to transition and move his family to 29 Palms. So, like I said, it was very cool to start pretty close to 123 and get out there. So I got very lucky in that regard.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we're about to wrap it up. So anybody's got any questions for the good major here, go ahead and try to type them in right now. I know there was one question about the website for the Outlaw Tactical.
It's Outlaw Ordnance.
Outlaw Ordnance?
Yeah, just.
So if they type that into Google, I'm sure it'll pop up.
Yeah, yep. And you can see what we do. It's pretty cool. We did 5 Trump 1911s. We did a Trump Thompson. We've done some Trump ARs. And we have we've teamed up with a big TikTok guy that's Ricky and the Boss. You can buy a t-shirt. You can buy Outlaw Ordnance t-shirts on there. You can get Ricky and the Boss t-shirts on there. You can look at what we're doing with fishing boats, and you can look at some of the guns we've done. We've been on the cover of Ballistic Magazine like 5 or 6 times. We've done some really cool stuff. So the guys that actually run it day to day, Chip and Nakia, they're super artistic. And we've done some crazy stuff. So anybody that's interested in going there and look at the website, it's a pretty good website.
So there's a couple questions here. One of them says, "Did you get gassed in Desert Storm?"
No. We were in our mop suits for the entire 4.5 days. We did go to mop level 1. Is it mop level 1 where you're gassed up all the way, or is it mop level 4?
It's 4.
Okay, yeah. So we were at mop level 4 when we did the first breach, and I think at some point during that first day we got out of our gas mask, but I don't think we were ever actually gassed. I know they gave us those stupid nerve agent, the nap pills, and I took the first 2. They were issued in a thing that looked like birth control. It was a little thing. You took a progressively bigger dose, and it was basically just nerve agent that you were taking to get you used to it. But I took the first, I think I took 2, and the second one I took made me super tired, but you couldn't go to sleep, and I was super jittery, so I freaking dug a hole and buried them. I didn't take them, but I don't think we got gassed.
Next question: did you start as second lieutenant, or did you go? Because of your prior enlisted time, they fast tracked you first?
I was a butter bar. I was a second lieutenant.
Yeah, I don't think they do that for officers, right?
They don't. No, everybody starts. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your commissioning source is. Like, so you can get commissioned out of the Naval Academy or prior enlisted, like I was. There's MESEPers, which is a Marine enlisted commissioning program, and then just people that come from civilian world. But everybody starts as a second lieutenant.
Next one, going back to Desert Storm, have you seen the documentary Killing Our Own, Gulf War Syndrome? If so, did you see anything like that during your first Gulf War deployment?
I haven't seen the documentary, but I do know that one of the LAR battalions got they got hit with a Hellfire missile from an Air Force A-10, if that's what the documentary is about. I do know that there have been a lot of people that were on that deployment or served there that have had some health problems. I have not, thank God, or haven't yet. So what was the name of the thing? I'll have to go back and watch it. Killing Our Own.
Let's see. Yeah, Killing Our Own. He says
Okay.
it refers to the side effects of depleted uranium munitions.
Yeah. Huh. I'll have to go watch it. I do know you're just exposed to stuff like that. It's just like the burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah,
You're just
burning
exposed
shit,
to shit.
burning shit with an e-stake.
Yeah.
Like,
I do remember our first sergeant. So our first sergeant was a guy named First Sergeant Ray. He had been 3 tours of duty in Vietnam. The first one, he came back and got to Okinawa, and something happened with his orders. He did not even get to come home. Turned back around, went back to Vietnam, and then for his third trip, he came back to the States and got orders to go back a third time. And I remember somebody griping about the big rumor when all that was going on is that we were going to be home. We're going to get home for Christmas. And he pretty much laid the law down and said, look, you're here until it's over. And basically suck it up. And then he told us a story about what had happened to him, and that kind of squashed that griping about being home.
So we got another question here. Looks like from possibly a tanker. Did you do your tank training at Fort Knox?
Yes.
Disney Barracks.
Yes. So the way officers, the enlisted Marine Corps tank school was at Fort Knox when I went through Fort Knox. And then the officers go through what's called AOBC, which is Armor Officer Basic Course. So the Marine Corps has a MARDET there that's over both courses. There's a lieutenant colonel, and then our class advisor for the Marine side, there were me, it was myself, and 2 other Marine lieutenants. We were with a bunch of Army lieutenants. So we had Army enlisted tank instructors, but we had 2. The Marines had 2. We had a staff sergeant and a gunny who got promoted to master sergeant while we were there. And then we had Captain Rush, who was our class advisor. And the way it worked is the Army lieutenants would have to go. They would have to do one of the classes that did was an Army writing class. And so there was a lot of training that they would have to go do that we didn't have to do because it didn't pertain to us. So when those type training events were going on, the Marine staff NCOs that were our instructors would pull us aside, and we would generally go to the tank ramp and just sit on a tank and just go through different rehearsals or procedures inside the tank. Or we may sit out on a picnic table and do sand table drills with the miniature tanks. But they would pull us out of that training and give us training on their own. But yeah, I did go to Fort Knox, and I think the enlisted Marines were over at Disney Barracks. And so when I got there, it's different when you're a lieutenant. So I lived on base, and we had the Army provided us with apartments, which were basically just fancy barracks. But that tank school for me was a horrific experience. It was the Army's it ain't the Marine Corps. I'll just say it like that.
Well, okay, I think we got one more. I don't know if he's making a statement or answering a question, but I'll pull it up here, and then we'll call it quits after this. It says, my uncle was attached to Marine headquarters, Okinawa, 68, 69, in the Com Shack. Then he spent days a month in the Marine Corps headquarters in Da Nang, also Com Shack. Was probably one of the few radio men he knew Morse code.
Yeah, so it's funny that comes up because my cousin was a Com Marine, and he's a Jingle. So he enlisted in 74, and he was a Com Marine, and he was stationed up at the Northern Training Area. They kept a det up there. So he taught classes at NTA, and then he was tasked with keeping radio communication probably back at Camp Courtney or Camp Schwab or somewhere down the island between the Marines that were training up at NTA and then back at, I guess, 3 MEF or 3rd MARDIV's headquarters somewhere back, probably at Camp Courtney. I'm not sure where their headquarters was at back then, but he was on recruiting duty when I enlisted, and he swapped quotas with my recruiter. So he actually recruited Staff Sergeant Gingles, put Private Gingles in the Marine Corps. And then when he, at some point, I think I was probably a Lance Corporal, he gave me his K-bar. And I think he probably stole that K-bar out of an armory, because it was, the ones that you bought at the exchange had like a brown scabbard with an Eagle Globe and anchor on it. The one that I had was all black, like the ones in the armory. And so I carried it the whole time I was in the Marine Corps. And then I gave it to my son. He just came. He didn't get leave after boot camp because of the whole COVID thing. But when he finished infantry school, he was home at leave, and I gave him that K-bar. So that K-bar has been in the Marine Corps since 1974, and I hope he carries it the whole time he's in.
Oh, that's awesome.
He was a comm Marine. Where I was going with all that, he was a comm Marine in Okinawa. That was his first duty station. And I don't know if he knew Morse code or not, but he probably had to learn it back in 74.
All right, guys. Well, I think this is a good stopping place. Major Gingles, USMC retired. We appreciate your time coming on here and sharing your story with us. So thanks for everybody that tuned in. We held about 60 to 70 folks in here throughout the duration of the 2.5 hours. We've been bumping our gums, and it's been a good talk. So it's definitely good to see you again, sir.
Yep. Hey, I gotta come to Dallas. You got to show me your room. I'm jealous.
Yeah, it's a little museum in here for sure.
Yeah, I got to get over there. I was going to try to be over there for this, but I just couldn't make it work this weekend. So, but I'll get over there soon. I'll come see you.
All right, guys. You have a good night. Semper Fidelis, and that's it.